The point is, be intentional with your wealth, be intentional with what you're doing. With even just a little bit of effort and intentionality, you can create big results for yourself.
Welcome to The Path to Wealth, the show about well-being, fulfillment, and financial freedom. And I'm your host, Hannes Henschel.
Hello everybody, welcome back to The Path to Wealth. Today we have Keith Blackborg from financialjourney.life. You know, he has a tremendous journey behind him already. He's a self-made millionaire in his 30s. He kind of retired when he was 32. He made work optional for himself, and we're going to dive in how he made that happen for himself and his wife. And beyond that, he just has a very interesting self-discovery story that we want to dive into. So welcome to the show, Keith.
Thanks for having me, Hans.
So yeah, maybe you can give us a little bit of an idea. How did you get started so early, and how did you retire so early? Because it's like the dream that everybody's looking for. How did you make it happen for yourself?
Sure. So I got started in 2010. Some of it was luck. Some was also taking advantage of the opportunities in front of me. So in 2010, I bought my first rental house, bought my first flip. My wife and I were working together as a team. She ended up focusing on the real estate, and I focused on a CPA firm focused on the high net worth real estate investors. So from the get-go, we started buying and flipping houses around 2013, 2014. We pivoted and started doing active and passive investments in hotels and apartments. I think commercial real estate is probably the way to get ahead furthest, fastest. So along the way, I got really good at some unique tax strategies that allowed real estate owners to legally manipulate what their tax bills were every year. As a result, when you're in the business and you're also helping with taxes on the business, and you have just a little bit of personality as a CPA, you're able to grow really quickly. So fast forward to 2016, I was in the business, I was having fun, but if I wasn't working, I was traveling. My wife and I had so much fun, but I could never get away from the business, no matter how many people I hired. When I had a client trying to close an 8 or 9 figure transaction and they needed support with something, I felt like I needed to step away, even if I was on vacation. And so 2016 rolled around. I thought the market was going to crash. I thought Hillary Clinton was going to get elected, and I thought I was going to get a divorce. So there were major things that needed to change in my life and reprioritize around what's truly important. And so as a result, I sold out of my active real estate holdings. I sold the CPA firm and really tried to recenter myself around my values, around life, and be very intentional about the life I live.
That was quite a lot in a nutshell. So we're going to kind of uncover this for a little bit. So how did you manage to kind of get yourself so deep into those connections? You said if you have a little bit of a personality and if you know how to save people taxes legally, you know, your firm grows rather quickly. But maybe you can dive into what are some of those legal ways of preserving or saving taxes for people that are invested in real estate that maybe the regular CPA in terms of strategy is not so aware of?
So a couple things. If you want to get ahead fast, either create or join a mastermind focused on the one thing that you're doing. That made a huge difference. And then we were also part of a real estate group, a larger group. And it just being active in that group, I got known as the CPA. As a result, my business grew 100% a year. Every year I was in business, which was just tremendous growth, at many points overwhelming. But the business took off and I was able to help a lot of people. So some of the things I did to help people as I really became more of a tax strategist. So when people would come to me, I'll share some of those tax strategies, but as a good CPA, I'm looking and breathing real estate taxes all day long. So having a CPA that's familiar with your niche means that whenever I see so many numbers that I can tell you your insurance is too high, you should go protest it. Or your property taxes, at least in Texas, you can fight some of the increases. Or, oh, you need a new maintenance guy. Here's a list of maintenance guys that either I or other clients have had success with. And so as a result, I end up adding value way beyond just the tax side of things. On the taxes, you're probably familiar with like cost segregation studies. Anybody who's been around real estate a little bit, and that allows you to take a property, especially a larger property, and dissect that into multiple segments. And sometimes maybe you're replacing the roof on an apartment complex. A lot of people, they know that they get to depreciate the new roof. What they might not know is they're scrapping the old roof. They're doing a partial disposition, and I can write off that roof. Through cost segregation studies, I can start to break down all the different parts of the building into different components and accelerate the depreciation. And so those are all ways. I don't have to do it, but I can do it. And then there's some other things I can do to reduce or eliminate depreciation recapture when I go to sell.
Yeah, and for those of you listening who have no idea about cost segregation, we also just had a podcast on that with Jonah Weiss, so you can go back to that episode where we dive in a little bit more. And Jonah is really a gem when it comes to cost segregation. So thanks, Keith, for bringing that up, and that gave me a chance to connect the dots on that.
And just to clarify, does Jonah, he works on commercial properties, right? So here's something else that's a resource that will help make cost segregation make sense if you own a less expensive property. Often people are spending $3,000 to $7,000 on a commercial property to do a cost segregation study. If you go to kbkg.com, it's a business-to-business site for CPA firms. You can spend $400 and they'll do a software analysis for a cost segregation study, and it's great for single family houses. So up to a $500,000 building value, which is going to be a lot, especially my single family investors. When they've got years where they've got lots of ordinary income, it's how many cost segregation studies do we need to do to wipe out your ordinary income for the year? And then ideally, we only have capital gains as your taxes. So if you only have capital gains from income, then the first $80,000 worth of capital gains is taxed at 0%. And that's one of the ways where we can really start to manipulate.
I mean, this is a great tool because it would take a person so much effort to go into this. But given that it's a software tool, it actually makes sense on a smaller scale and not only on a commercial scale.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things you also mentioned, and actually it kind of weaves through everything you say, it's a relationship business from what I'm hearing. You said join a mastermind because that connects you to the right kind of people. It's also adding value. So I think that's something that in many of the conversations we're having, it's in real estate especially, it's a relationship business after all, right? It's all about who you know and in which room you're in.
I absolutely agree with that. I would not be where I am today without those relationships. So to touch on that initial mastermind I joined, I put it together. We were in a real estate seminar, and some of us are just like, hey, we're all like 25-ish at the time. Let's just join together and meet once a month or every 2 weeks for a little while. And it's not like anybody was charging another. It was a true mastermind where we get together for 2-ish hours at a time, and we're talking about rents or this. And we were all kind of learning and discovering together what the purpose of getting out of our day jobs, and which was kind of a big deal at age 25 because you don't typically have a lot of money in your 20s. And so through that, everybody in that group that wanted to be out of their job, which was 80% of us, there were 16 of us in that group, ended up leaving their corporate job and either starting their own business or going full-time into real estate in 5 years, which I think is a tremendous hurdle. So if you ever want to be active or be really good at anything, do a mastermind group to help support you. As you said, it's a relationship.
So that also
business.
ties into you're kind of the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with, because you made an effort. I'm like, okay, this is where I'm going. These are the kind of people I want to surround myself with, because there's no restriction. There's actually enforcement of what I'm looking for. We are exchanging knowledge, and that's really in the original sense of the mastermind group. Like it's, for example, mentioned in Think and Grow Rich, that you get together and contemplate.
Yes, and to build off of that, two things. The mastermind is often thrown around as a marketing term, and what they really mean is just group coaching, and they're going to charge you $50,000 or $100,000 for it.
Yeah.
That's not what I talk about. I think that's, I won't say junk, but it's not as helpful as a true mastermind as Napoleon Hill defined it. And so for me, often I'm not trying to be the smartest or wealthiest or most successful person in the room. I'm trying to put other people around me. And how do I get more successful people around me? I find some way that I can add value to them as a way that they're interested in me. So maybe for you, so I'll give you an example. In my case, I got really good at taxes. So people would say, hey, I can help people in the 8 to 9 figure net worth range with their taxes and legally manipulate it. So they would bring me in and I'd be a part of the conversation, because every transaction they're talking about, I could say, oh, well, this is how we shave 10 to 40% off that tax bill by doing these things. But as a result, I got to be part of all the conversations and I just learned a lot. In your case, maybe that is helping with marketing or networking or relationships. What is it that you can do to add value to other people in the room? And that's your ticket to be a part of that.
And that
group.
seems to be like the general concern of people that are just getting started and like, hey, I don't know anybody, I don't have the capital, I don't have the relationships. But I guess anybody can hone in on crafting some skill that is valuable in the either the mastermind or the community that they are in.
And to build off of that, even if you don't know anything, in my case, my first group, none of us knew anything, but we all were actively learning and pursuing together. So it's like one of us would learn something and we'd share it with the rest of the group. As a result, it multiplied the results of all of us. And so we all got further faster than any one of us could have done.
Yeah, and I guess there's also that effect that teaching is the fastest way of learning, because in order to teach something to somebody, you actually have to know what you're talking about. And you like, it's not just reading it once and like, okay, I think I got it. It's like, okay, I'm going to present that in front of my mastermind group. I should better get the gist of this.
And has that been one of the secrets for you growing as fast as you have? I think
so. I mean, for me, whenever I feel like I'm sharing what I've kind of experienced and learned, it reinforces it. And it also helps me to refine my language and kind of be more effective in the communication. And I can tell in my head when I'm going through reiterations, okay, and I'm like, okay, that didn't sound too refined, so maybe I can say it better next time. And then, as you go, you become more effective in the language you use and you can address things better.
Yes, I would absolutely agree with that. It is the power of learning how to communicate your message more effectively, and practice is one of the best ways to make that.
Talking about message, I know you retired and you traveled the world, but you felt kind of something is missing and you came back and kind of engaged with people again because you wanted more of life and you kind of wanted to share your message. So tell us a little bit about what's your message and, why did you start another business despite not having to?
So 2016 rolled around. My wife and I just went off and traveled the world. We had a blast, and there was a lot of healing that happened through there and some personal growth. A lot of my ego was tied up in my business and feeling important and feeling like people needed me all the time. And there was a certain quiet time that had to happen as a result of leaving that environment. And it was healthy for me. But it felt painful in the moment. And so there's a lot of personal growth that happens. And that's one of the things that happens whenever you're exiting a business or retiring, something like that. So fast forward, we got through our 3 years of travel, we got the best souvenir we could have ever had. And that was our firstborn son. And so I've got a 3-year-old now. He's so much fun. I've now also got a 3-month-old, 3-year-old, 3-month-old. That'll change your life. So after traveling the world, how do you decide where to live? Wherever grandma is. Somehow that just, it becomes really important. So coming out of that, I really thought about work optional. Work optional is maybe I don't have to work anymore because I was able to put money with my best performing clients and did a bunch of other investing stuff. It was kind of a journey while I was traveling the world. I was also investing and it was fun. So I had some success and also learned from my lessons along the way. And what I learned is I really like talking wealth. I like talking taxes. That might sound weird, but I actually enjoy looking at the tax code, finding the best ways, the best scheme, strategy to save money. It's kind of, I'm a tax geek, I'm a CPA, so it just kind of fits. And so as I was going along, I would meet people and I just want to share anyway. It was like, hey, if you do these things, you could be work optional very soon, or these are the things you could optimize to grow your wealth. And I had lots of fun conversations. So at the end of all that, I came back and I was like, what do I want to do? If I wanted to make the most amount of money possible, I go back to commercial real estate syndication. I think that's the best reliable way to make a lot of money quickly is as a syndicator, because you get a cut of everybody else's success. In my case, I really enjoy having conversations, real meaningful conversation with people and really seeing them take off. And that's why Financial Journey was born. I get to talk wealth, get to talk taxes, but we also do fun trips. So we're renting out a castle in Italy and just going together. Or we do different events around the country that are just meant to always be in cool people. I want to do life with neat people. When you're traveling the world on your own, it can get lonely. So I want to build the community of people that I like hanging out with anyways. And now I also get to talk about stuff I enjoy. And as a result, we're all kind of, in my mind, we're all able to invest in each other. It's that community becomes its own mastermind that all supports each other. So we all grow that much faster, but not only in wealth, but in life. And the wealth is just the fuel for that
That
life.
reminds me really of what Tony Robbins touches up on a lot. The secret to living is giving. And I think your journey is really that. Mm-hmm. You started out and you were honing in on your personal freedom, your personal finance, and like, okay, I want to build a big business. I want to have those kind of financial goals in check. But then as you went further, you felt the emptiness of that by itself. And then on your personal discovery journey, you kind of lean back into it, like, whoa, it's actually, there's more to it. And I very much feel the same way. I think by giving, it's generally the most fulfilled moment in life. Like whenever I can share something that I learned on my journey and it helps someone else, that's like almost selfish, because I feel like I'm getting the better part of it, but I'm also helping someone simply by sharing what I might have learned already. Yeah.
And it's fun. I love win-win scenarios where you're somehow benefiting, but I like to focus on how is the other person benefiting first. If they're benefiting, then I guess it's an abundance mentality in that a lot of people preach it, but sometimes living it is a little harder. But when I'm able to give and I'm able to see the results of that, I only need a fraction of the value that I create, and I get paid really well as a part of that. And so I try and focus on what can I do to build other people up. And I may not make money with results everybody gets, but I know it comes around. So I just continue to give. If I serve first and people know you have that mentality of wanting to serve first, you kind of become a magnet for other people wanting to be around you, because they just know you're generous and you're not always looking for a cut of everything. And there's a certain freedom and fun in that, and just being able to give.
And I truly believe, and one of the reasons we have the path to wealth is that everybody that has reached that level that you hit, where you're taken care of and your family is taken care of, naturally after some time, you will turn into someone who turns towards the community and wants to give back. That's at least my personal belief. I think that's the natural progression. And I think it's one of the reasons everybody should seek financial independence, because it will allow everybody to give more and contribute more, because you don't need to think, oh, what about me? Because you're taken care of and you set yourself up, and it is actually not as hard as I think it's not as hard as working your entire life going to 9 to 5. That's at least my personal take on it. I think just putting in the homework, getting the structure set up and then living life on your terms is so much more rewarding, and it allows you to grow into that place of yourself where you can give to the community.
And I have something, and I think you do too. I have something that most people will never have, and that's enough. And so, yes, I could get more money and probably buy a beach house in Malibu. I could upgrade my countertops. I could buy some new car, maybe at some point buy a yacht or a jet. But I don't know that I really need that. I enjoy that stuff sometimes, and I may rent the dream, but I'm happy with where I'm at, and it's more important that I have the cycle, the community, and the people I want to be with, and that's so much more fulfilling than just getting more stuff or whatever it is.
So you also touched up on earlier that you were close to divorce given the friction and all the work, and there was probably not the romance because of you were always just tied up in the business. How did you, first of all, thank you for being so honest, and then how did you manage to recover from being close to divorce, but then now you're back in a thriving relationships, you have 2 kids, that's kind of a challenge in itself.
So for me, there were a few things. One was unplugging from the business and taking my headspace away from the business and putting it back on the family and life. Secondly, for me, my church relationship with Jesus became a much more important part of that. And it was through some of that, some growth, some reprioritization, and some heart changes that it really made a difference for me. And then it took some time and intentionality about prioritizing life, vision, where I'm going next, and not prioritizing just the money within itself. That stuff will come around. I know if I would have stayed in business, that I could have made a lot more money. If I wanted to have sold out of real estate, I'd be worth a lot more today. But I'm great with where I'm at. I prefer the life I have. I learned from working with a lot of clients, just because you've got 8 or 9 figures doesn't mean you're happier. And that realization helped me realize what I truly value.
And I think that's such a crucial piece of the journey, to realize when you have enough. I think I've seen in over the last decade so many people who are heavy hitters in their own industries, and they're not fulfilled by any means, and the relationships are not there. And then I'm always wondering, what are you doing this for?
For me, or what a lot of people end up doing it, is they just like playing the game. They like doing it. It's not like at any point there's an end. So even if you're in the business, what's the finish line? Business is going to happen, was here, I don't know, thousands of years before
Especially
you were
real
born.
estate.
It'll be here after you're born. Exactly. So you get a segment of time. The businesses that were here 300 years ago aren't here today, and the ones here today probably aren't going to be here even, 10 years, 100 years, definitely not 300 years from now. Things grow and shift. And so once you realize that the goal itself is not just more, it's unattainable. There's always going to be somebody who's going to come out with something else, and your life is going to end. That is one certainty we have right now. So what is it that you want to do with the time you have here on this earth?
It's all about the time, not the money. What do we do with our time, and how is the experience of every minute of the day?
Yes. So shifting into the framework of that, I have this concept of wealth as the business. A lot of people focus on growing their work business, or they're trying to grow some investments, or they're trying to save their way to wealth by cutting expenses. I think you need to view all those together: your work business, your investments, and your finances, your personal finances, and they all feed up into the wealth business. And when you have that mentality, you can start to ask the question of, which division of my wealth business do I need to be growing now to get me where I want to go? And where is it that I want to go? Once you know what your dream is, your goal, then you can reverse engineer the wealth that you need to create to help you get where you go. And you start to prioritize the wealth business. I find a lot of people end up working on building a business or stay way longer in a career than what they need to. And had they shifted priorities somewhere along the way more towards investments, at least around the halfway point, you need to be focused more on the investing part of it, either actively or passively. And that's often what's going to create the biggest results. Your work business is just what gives you the income that typically feeds your investments, unless you own a business and something that's sellable.
And then especially if you upgrade your lifestyle according to the income upgrade, then you're maybe not going anywhere in terms of actually building freedom for yourself.
You're spending your success as you go before it ever takes root. I'd rather plant some of the seeds of that success in the ground with a little time and effort. It can grow to substantially more.
So if somebody joins for example, your groups, how do you usually go about that? And how do you touch up on where they are, and how do you take them somewhere where 3 to 5 years down the road, work becomes optional to them?
So my client avatar is somebody who owns a business, is an accredited investor. I'm not the guy that shows somebody who's just getting started how to create wealth. I'm the guy who, once you already have some success, you've got a business and assets, how do we transform those assets and optimize them and reach work optional? So if you're own a business that's earning, especially if you're earning $500,000 or more a year and you've got significant assets, my promise, 3 to 5 years, you'll be at work optional. You won't have to work after that. In the first couple of years, I work with people to show how to build and manage a portfolio of alternative investments that you own and control. And so really, if you're familiar with family offices, like ultra high net worth families, I show people who have the $3 to $50 million net worth how to set up their own family office. So there's the taxes, there's the wealth, there's the mindset, there's the vision, there's the deals that you get access to deals. And I also show everybody in the group how to bring the best of their deals to the network. As a result, when you get a bunch of successful people bringing their best deals to the network, you get some amazing things coming through. And then around year 3 or 4, we start talking about how do we maximize the sales price of your business? What are the systems, processes, and things that you need to have in place to really not only increase your net income, but increase the sellability? And then in time, what are we doing to maximize the sales price terms and reduce the taxes along the way? And then after 5 years, how do you have a board level role in your wealth business and transition out? What do you want to do next? Plan Bs. There's all sorts of fun stuff we can do. But the point is, be intentional with your wealth, be intentional with what you're doing. With even just a little bit of effort and intentionality, you can create big results for yourself.
I would agree. It doesn't take a PhD, actually quite the opposite. I think financial education, you can get quite far with 1 day per weekend or something.
Yeah, so, I'd agree with that. It just setting a little bit of time on there, calendaring your time, listening to you, staying in touch, keeping work on relationships that matter, or join an existing community of great relationships. All of that will help you get further faster.
So talking about building a portfolio and assets, right now we're in a very uncertain environment. Overseas, there is a war in Europe. The last couple of days, we've seen the stock market taking quite a dive. Real estate, at least in the press, seems to be overvalued, and that's up for debate. What's your take on the current asset classes, and where do you think investors should put their money right now in such an uncertain environment?
So first and foremost, I think we're in a recession, and the data as of today has not come out saying that. But having listened to economists, people that work at the Fed, and just people who are in the know, I believe we're in a recession. It's just a matter of time before we come out. So, and we're also in a high inflationary environment. So the consumer price index, which is the index the government measures inflation on, I think is flawed. They'll say it's 8 to 9%. They manipulated the numbers back in 2019, right when COVID hit, and they increased the amount, say that rents are as part of that basket. Government says rents have increased 5% year over year. Rent.com says rents have increased 25%. Which do you think is more accurate? The government has all sorts of reasons financially and politically to lie about the rate of inflation. So I think it's very possible that we're in the 12 to 15%.
I think Zillow probably has
plus.
more timely
so knowing that we've
numbers than the government.
Yes. I agree with that. I'd be really interested in truly understanding where they're getting their numbers from. However, so backing up, what kind of investments do well in an inflationary environment? So there's a few things I like. First and foremost, hard assets, real estate, oil and gas, commodities, could be agriculture, anything that has real tangible value, maybe manufacturing businesses. All of those are things that are worthwhile I could go on and on about. So I will say the next hottest thing I think is going to be buying businesses, baby boomers retiring, people wanting to get out, wanting to bring foreign manufacturing back to the United States. There's just so many things to make businesses go well. But to back up and say, I still think real estate's a great deal. Some people will say, well, interest rates are now 5 or 6% instead of 2 or 3%. 2 to 3% interest rates were the lowest in history in the last 5,000 years. Like, it's insane. So when we were in the 70s, interest rates, we had 12, 15% interest rates. That's extreme. But the Fed is not raising interest rates to those levels because they can't. And so still, I love buying what I call double dip assets. Assets that you make money in two ways. One, they cash flow and there's equity. Real estate's a great example. Apartments, industrial, RV parks, office buildings, hotels, or where you're able to convert hotels or office buildings, say, to an apartment is a great way to get in at a discount, or buy up tertiary retail centers, retail on the outskirts, turn it into self-storage, whatever it is you can do. The other way you can make money is through the depreciation of debt. So when you have even an interest rate at 5% and inflation is 10 or 15%, then if inflation's 15% and your debt is 5%, you've got inflation paying down your debt because you're able to take inflated dollars and pay your debt back later. So I love debt right now. For me, it's just another way to make money.
I mean, right now it's a good environment to have the right kind of debt, not consumer debt. Okay, don't misunderstand us. We're talking about debt that has real assets on the books.
Yes. So I want as much debt as possible. That sounds odd. That sounds risky. There's some things I want to do to make sure I've got cash reserves and I'm not in a place. Most of the people that got hurt in 2008 didn't have cash reserves or they didn't have fixed debt. They had debt where the banks could call their credit lines due. That feels risky. But when I've got a bank who is giving me a loan for 30 years, as long as my real estate is positive cash flowing and I've got some cash reserves, there's nothing that can do to make me sell. So real estate can go up and down, but as long as it's positive cash flowing, I'm not going to go bankrupt. I got to make enough to pay my debt. And all the real estate, all the hard assets are likely to rise with inflation. So you're making money not only from the business or the operations of the real estate or whatever it is, but you're also keeping up with inflation. It's inflation adjusted. So I think it's just a great way to do well in this market environment of uncertainty. And lastly, one other twist. If you can buy at a discount in this market, if you got some way to get that real estate or get that property, you're just building in more equity from day one. And that's just additional safety and risk management. So those are the kinds of deals I love to find. I love to present to clients deals with asymmetrical risk, high upside, low downside of risk.
Can't agree more. I mean, especially, right now there is uncertainty, but I think people like you and me, I wake up and I'm like, I see a big opportunity here. It's like, okay, now there's a lot of businesses that are actually healthy. Looking from a stock market perspective, Warren Buffett always says, I like to buy stocks and stocks on a discount. And he always is like, okay, this is a buying opportunity. I mean, there's a reason the man holds 25% in cash right now, because he knows what you just said.
Agreed.
We're headed into like a recession, or we're already in it. And, he's going to use this as a buying opportunity.
Yes. So the other thing to think about cash is trash with inflation, but it's also necessary. So what do I do with my cash short term? Because I'm losing my buying power. So I still do have a significant emergency fund, and I didn't care that much. I was like, inflation is 2%, not a big deal. When we're talking to 10 to 15%, my cost of capital to sit idle is much higher. So I love to have great places to park cash stably, that I've got access to it when I need it to go out and buy. But I also have, I'm preserving my purchasing power, things that will index with inflation.
Like an example, where are you parking it right now? I hope you didn't park it in Bitcoin. Or...
That's a good. So I know Bitcoin has been all over the place. I'm bringing up. I've got on my screen, I have what's called an investment menu, and we get different people that come and present, and so we've got a list of just great places to park it. So I'll share a couple of the places that we use to preserve cash flow. So simple things for your audience that's going to be publicly available. I'm going to focus on that. Is you can do gold, silver, platinum. I think is at a place where it's been ignored by the markets, and I think that's a great way to keep money. If you can do any sort of agriculture, land banks. Land banks aren't going to have where you're basically buying land. That's going to tend to keep up with inflation or agriculture. But on the flip side, sometimes you can buy into funds that they'll allow you, after you've held it for 1 to 12 months, you can exit on a monthly basis. So being in funds or energy funds that are in certain industries that are going to allow you to keep up with inflation are huge. In my case, I like to take it one step further. So when I'm trying to preserve purchasing power, is there a way that I cash flow? So for example, 3 years ago, I invested in a gold mine that was just getting started. Instead of just buying straight precious metals at the beginning of COVID, I wanted to buy something that would actually give me a return. We're supposed to be IPOing later this year, and that'll be both a great investment and a way that I could have exited sooner if I needed to get my capital back.
So you invested in an actual gold mine, so they're currently operating and they're going IPO? Nice.
Correct. So they're restoring an old mine that needed some work. They had all sorts of things in place, but they really needed some extra capital to increase, to get people and equipment in there to really leverage it up. And that's my favorite time to invest in something, is when they've already operating, they already got the cash flow, but they need some additional capital to build something out. In their case, also build an on-site processor for expanded capacity. Those are all ingredients, I think, for something.
In that
can do
particular
really well.
situation, it sounds like it's already like 90% there. So we're taking out the majority of the risk.
Yeah.
We're not building out a new mine. We're not drilling like bare ground in the hope there is some gold. But you already took a lot of the risk.
Yeah.
And again, asymmetric returns because you mitigated the risk well. And now we're very close to an IPO on that particular investment.
Exactly. So that's asymmetrical risk. Or I invested in a gas deal in December. They had pre-negotiated on the terms last May when oil prices were down. It took 6 months to close this, but they had locked in the price last May. And then as oil and gas prices rose, we bought with essentially 50% equity, and then they were reworking some mines. So almost think apartments, value add, but we're doing that with oil and gas production. So they were able to, I think it was triple the gas productions and double the oil production within a few months just by getting some rehab in there. And as a result, I'm making back like all my money within the first year, and it should be producing for me.
I think here's the important part for the audience. You have that underlying financial understanding of what you're looking for, but it also helps you to seek opportunities in investments that might not become like first choice for you. Like you started out in real estate, but over the years, you understood what makes a good investment from a cash flow perspective, from a risk perspective, from a return perspective. And now you are able to identify those kind of vehicles that help you sustain and build your wealth.
So, good point. This can maybe seem overwhelming for somebody who's just getting started. I want to point out it's good to learn just one new asset class at a time. Find something, get good at it, vet that before you move on. In my case, when I did the gold mine, gold and silver mine, it took me about 6 weeks of due diligence, including on-site visits, learning exactly how this is done, how you read the technical reports, and then on top of that, wanting to bring in other industry experts who are familiar with the industry to really fill in my knowledge gaps, because I wasn't, and I'm still not the expert on silver and gas or oil, gold and silver, but I've learned a lot as I go and more how to vet these. And so that's an important part of anybody who you're vetting, and who's the management team. Do you trust them? All those things are important parts of due diligence.
I think especially the trust part here. There are many, many tempting investments out there that have certain like marketing propositions and high returns. But I, in my personal experience, and I say that probably on almost every episode, but it's so important to know the people you invest with. Like, because you need to know the horse, but you also need to trust the jockey.
Yeah. That's a good way to say that. I like that.
Yeah, I just think it's so important because you want to know that you can sleep well, because for me the most important is a certain state of peace of mind too. And I was invested in businesses with business partners where I didn't feel comfortable after some time, and it just takes away from everything else you want to experience in life, because it becomes one big headache. So those are things that Keith brought up that are super, super important, and people, you really have to focus on, learn or get to know the people you're investing with, and what are their values. And I think Keith is also big on that, because he's building a community of like-minded people that have similar values. So you should definitely seek that out whenever you're aligning your money, your hard-earned money, with somebody's investments. So Keith,
agreed.
Where are you planning to take it from here? Like you're already retired now. You have 2 beautiful children. You fixed your relationship with your wife over the years, and you're building a community for yourself. Where are you taking it from here? What is your intention for the next couple of years?
You know what? Frankly, it's just how the thought of building just sounds fun. How big can it go while staying in my boundaries? So what I feel like, family is super important with me. I never want to get back to who I was. So how do I grow? It's kind of a fun challenge of what can I do with my limited time? How can I optimize? Who can I partner with? Who's a good fit? Who are the clients that we actually enjoy spending time together with anyways? And just see where it goes. I had a conversation with a client earlier today, and just watching the light bulbs go on about how they were making money one way, but they could frame things a little differently that would create a bigger win for their clients and themselves, and that they now get equity in the business while creating more results. Those are my favorite kind of discussions, is how can we take your skills, your resources, put a plan together that really helps you accelerate to that next level.
Yeah. So I think the majority of the episode was already about it, but I like to ask, what does it mean to you personally, how to spend a life well lived? Because this is the path to wealth. And you already touched up on it, because that's kind of your personal journey, but maybe in one sentence, how would you define that for yourself?
I think it's about getting clear about what you want. And that is such a tough question, but also who you want to be with, and then use the wealth or your freedom just to fuel doing that. For me, who can I serve? Who can I help? And genuinely so, not some cheesy, I'm just trying to take people's money. I'm not set up to make the most amount of money possible. When you truly want to help people and think about how you can add value to others first, you end up building a generous, genuine people around you, community around you. It just makes life worth so much living. People who have the same values as you, who appreciate the same kind of life-giving relationships. And wealth is merely the fuel for everybody's freedom. That's what I truly enjoy, and I think that's what makes life worth living for me.
I agree completely. So Keith, thank you so much for being on the show. Where can people connect with you? Because I want to make sure that all of the heavy hitters here that are already in the 3 to 50 million range, make sure to connect with Keith, because he will really take you to the next level and make sure that you can live life on your terms. And I want to make sure they can connect with you. So where can they find you?
So financialjourney.life, that's my website. Reach out to me there. We'll end up having a personal conversation at some point. I'd love to connect further and just see what makes sense for the both of us. And I'd talk specifically about how we might help each other. And I look forward to meeting whoever comes
Perfect.
through.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Keith. And I'm actually already looking forward to another one of these.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at The Path to Wealth. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Check out our upcoming guests and be sure to share it with all your friends and family that want to take their life to the next level of wealth.